What up, friends? You ever get that feeling where you just kind of want to not exist? Like, not die, but just stop existing? Well, today we're going to be reviewing the newest album by Machine Gun Kelly, Mainstream Sellout. This is the 6th album overall by the American rapper turned pop punk frontman, Machine Gun Kelly. I think we all know the story here. MGK was a moderately successful rapper who ended up beefing with Eminem, and the fallout of that basically caused him to switch genres entirely. That resulted in the 2020 album from him, Tickets to My Downfall, and now here we are. This is not a good album. In fact, I would go as far as to say it is a good indicator of what is wrong with the modern pop punk and just rock scene in general. I can't even really structure this like a normal review because I just blatantly, flat out don't give a shit about most of what's on here, to be honest. So, for the first time since I recorded that new politics review, we are going to be dividing it into the good, the bad, and then some extra thoughts at the end. Let us start with the good. There is not much good. However, I will make it a point to try and find some. Now, the instrumentals, for better or for worse, do sound fairly pop-punk most of the time. It is, granted, the most basic by-the-books pop-punk out there. However, I will give it to him that the aesthetic is relatively cohesive. We also have Travis Barker on the drums here, and I will say that they are pretty tight and punchy, well put together for the most part. I do think he is probably the most integral part of this entire album. Maybe not for the reasons intended, Lil Wayne's features on this album greatly amuse me. For some reason, Lil Wayne has probably the most energy out of anyone on this entire project, and his verse on Drug Dealer especially sees him getting so weirdly hyped that I just can't help but laugh, bro. His part on A isn't as good, but it's still pretty fun in a sort of dumb way. We have Willow coming in on the unfortunate single Emo Girl, and she's also probably one of the only people that actually has some semblance of emotion on this entire project other than Wayne. Her cadence actually does have some attitude, and her lyrics, while kinda corny at times, are somewhat personable. Most of the lyrics on here are about as cliche as you can get for pop punk. However, as dumb as it is, her "I'm bleeding on your blink T" line does give me some sort of scenario to work with. I feel like it maybe could have been written by a real human being. She is also a bit closer to the age range that makes lyrics like these a bit more acceptable. We also have Maybe by Bring Me the Horizon. The hook on that project hits a bit harder than a lot of the other songs on the record, so it's got that going for it. So, that was that. Now let's get to the bad, because there is a fuck ton of it. First off, the instrumentals. I know I talked about them in the good category, but let's be clear here. They are the bare minimum. This album sounds like if you focus grouped pop punk in a room with the most basic people imaginable who have never listened to a punk song in their life. These songs are the epitome of bland, with the most generic progressions imaginable. Most of these songs also just flat out sound the same, with the same old instrumental, with the same old lyrics talking about the same old problems. The riffs are so generic and cliche, and there's also these sort of rap rock and pop rap sounding songs that come in here and there that just sound so out of place and benign. No track stands out, and the ones that do have something notable about them tend to be the bad kind of notable. Now let's talk about the vocals. I have never heard a punk vocalist sound so lifeless in my life. Not only does MGK sound half asleep most of the time, but he also pitch corrects his vocals constantly. It's so noticeable, and it's so, weird, too. He does it even when he has these more, talking flows. I do not understand it. It's very distracting, and the lack of emotion totally kills any impact that the lyrics could have had, especially as the delivery can sometimes make up for bland songwriting. But I don't get that here. Like I said before, MGK basically gets overshadowed on his own project by Willow and Lil Wayne, and they're not even much to write home about to begin with. This isn't even mentioning some of the other features like Ian Dior with his very generic flows, and Landon Barker, who basically just matches MGK's lifelessness. Nobody on this album sounds like they want to be here, which is very fitting because at this point I don't really want to be listening anymore. But we still have to talk about this album's lyrics, which is probably one of the biggest flaws on the entire project. Straight up, this just feels wrong, man. Listen, I don't doubt that MGK might actually be going through a lot of the things that he's writing about on this project. You know, he might be going through depression, and he might be just really reminiscing about his younger days with his parents and stuff like that. I don't know his life. I can't claim to know his life. However, it is delivered in the most generic and lifeless way possible. It does not sound inspired whatsoever. The writing is incredibly juvenile. There's no wit or humor, which is essential for a punk album. Homeboy is like 30 going on 13 here, which is not a good look. Blandness and childishness aside, some songs on here are hilariously bitter and misinformed, especially the title track. Like, nobody is saying that you sold out or you're ruining the scene, dude. You're barely in the scene to begin with, and you were already popular before you switched genres. How do you sell out when you're already popular? And yes, I'm sorry, it does feel weird when you're rich and 30 and you're still writing lyrics like, I'm a lost boy, she's a goth girl, she's a pop girl, on God Save Me. Let's also not even get into Emo Girl with MGK's questionable thoughts about underage girls out there. Like, I get the pop-punk frontman stereotype, but damn. That's also not even covering how he romanticizes toxic relationships like that of Sid and Nancy. That was pretty self-explanatory, actually. Like, no kids, suicide pacts are bad, and Sid and Nancy are not the ideal relationship. And no, MGK, you could not have written Donda. Like, that is a meme, and I cannot even believe that was said by a real human being. All in all, I just don't know who this album is for. It's an incredibly bad pop-punk record, it's an incredibly bad pop-rock record, and it's probably one of the most generic pieces of music out there. Nothing is exciting or emotional about this record. Nothing shows innovation or forward thinking. Instead, this album romanticizes the past, but also doesn't even understand why pop-punk was so popular back in the day to begin with. I would argue that if this album was made purely to appeal to the preteen and teen crowd, it actively insults their intelligence. The vocals are so lifeless, and they make each song sound totally insincere even if they were intended to be genuine. The instrumentals on here are by the books and boring. The lyrics are cliche at best and childish at worst, and occasionally questionable when sung by a 30-year-old. Travis Barker, Willow, and Lil Wayne add a tiny bit of life to this project. However, at the end of the day, it ends up draining mine. So, no, I do not like this album, and there are plenty of better pop-punk acts out there that you should be listening to and following instead, like the new Pop record, which I just reviewed, and you should listen to it, although listen to Morbid stuff first. But, I beg you, listen to better pop-punk, please. There is better out there. I am feeling a light 2 on this new album by Machine Gun Kelly. That's pretty generous, I will say, but certain parts of this record are so bad that they end up being kind of funny, so I'm giving it a 2 instead of a 1. And, of course, we have to talk about album covers on this show, and it's also a not very good album cover. It screams early 2000s cheese, I think. Like, not to knock Simple Plan, it's giving Simple Plan. And that is not the greatest thing. So, I don't like this album cover. The color scheme is, like, okay. I do like the monochrome mixed with pink. I think that is very good. However, the imagery is just, again, it's a boardroom, like, focus grouped pop-punk album cover. It just does not seem genuine to me, and I don't like it. But of course, you know, those were just my thoughts on the new Machine Gun Kelly album. What did you guys think? Do you actually like his new pop-punk direction? Maybe you think it's more genuine than I do? Or is this just not good? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell so I don't have to do this again. And until the next one, farewell.